Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to have 5 legislative days to revise and extend my remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of the special order into the record.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, in November of 2024, the American people didn't just cast votes. They issued a thunderous mandate. It was loud, it was clear, it was unmistakable. They rose up and they declared, enough is enough. Enough is the reckless spending that mortgages our children's future. Enough of open borders flooding our communities with chaos and danger. Enough of unelected bureaucrats and activist judges lording over a free people. Enough of weakness abroad, surrendering to our enemies while our adversaries laugh. The voters didn't send House Republicans back to Washington to warm chairs, cut ribbons, and play defense. They sent us here to fight. They sent us here to do government differently, to reverse the damage, to restore what made America great. And now, the moment of truth has arrived. What must the House Republican majority do in 2026? And why must we act boldly, without apology and without hesitation? The American people expect a Republican-led Congress to deliver results. Alongside President Trump, we must leverage our House and Senate majorities to advance a bold agenda fulfilling more of our promises. We must act urgently in the first quarter of 2026, using every tool available to compel the Senate to deliver now. You see, the stakes extend beyond the next election. America's future depends on it. This evening, I want to take a few moments to lay out that answer. 4 priorities, 4 commitments, 4 reasons the future of the Republic depends on what we do next. First of all, there must be a priority to cut spending, because a nation that can't balance its books can't defend its future. The most fundamental duty of any government worthy of the name is stewardship of the taxpayer's hard-earned dollar. Families balance their checkbooks every month. Small businesses live within their means, or they fail. Yet for too long, Washington has acted as if math, morality, and accountability simply don't apply here. Today, right now, in January of 2026, our national debt stands at more than $38.4 trillion. Madam Speaker, that's not just the statistics. It's a theft from our children. It is bondage for our grandchildren. It is a crushing burden that grows by billions every single day, while interest payments alone devour more than $1 trillion a year. Please, let's be crystal clear with America. We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem and a massive fraud problem in this country. Just look at the scandals exploding across this country right now. In Minnesota, Democrats allowed millions of taxpayer dollars to flow to fraudulent daycare centers. Fake operations with misspelled signs, empty buildings, no children in sight. And yet they pocketed huge sums from programs meant to help the vulnerable children. A viral investigation by independent journalist Nick Shirley has triggered federal probes, payment freezes, and demands for accountability. Money intended for children, stolen by criminals exploiting government incompetence. Back home in my own state of North Carolina, a fresh federal deficit or audit just revealed that 54% more than half of the state's non-domiciled commercial driver's license were issued illegally, often to foreign nationals whose driver's license were valid long after their lawful presence in the United States had expired. I submit to you, this isn't a clerical glitch. It's a systemic failure that is putting the lives of Americans at risk on our highways, wastes taxpayer resources, and yes, threatens millions in federal funding. Ladies and gentlemen, fraud is never victimless. It robs seniors of the benefits they earned. It shortchanges our veterans who sacrificed for this country. It burdens working families already struggling to get ahead, and it saddles future generations with debts they never agreed to carry. And so in 2026, I believe House Republicans must do what Washington has refused to do for decades: hunt down waste, fraud, and abuse, and shut it off at its source. That means oversight with real teeth, audits that trigger prosecutions, not just reports, and zero tolerance. Cut funding to any agency that refuses to clean house and deal with the situation. Only a year ago, several in my party were hyping up DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. I must ask, where's the enthusiasm now? Why are we not continuing to slash the waste, fraud, and abuse? We did it with USAID, NPR, and PBS. But listen, we can't stop there. While we're wielding the budget axe, let's be unequivocal about what should never receive another dime of taxpayer money. No taxpayer-funded abortions, period. Full stop. The federal government must never force Americans of faith, or any Americans for that matter, to bankroll the destruction of innocent life. Life begins in the womb, and America must never apologize for defending the most vulnerable among us. And there is one more pipeline that I believe must be severed. No funding for lawless jurisdictions. Cities and states that are defying federal immigration law, harboring criminals instead of enforcing the law, should receive not one more cent of federal grants. We cannot, we must not continue rewarding sanctuary politicians who put American lives in the crosshairs. This past Saturday, on what would have been Laken Riley's 24th birthday, we paused to remember a bright, compassionate nursing student whose life was stolen far, far too soon. Laken was jogging on a college trail, doing what young Americans do every day, full of promise, full of faith, full of future. She never made it home. Her killer, my colleague talked about tonight, an illegal alien with ties to the Venezuela gang Tren de Aragua, who crossed our border, was released, and then brutally ended her life. Don't forget Laken. Don't forget Rachel Morin. Don't forget Jocelyn Nungare. Don't forget the countless American victims, daughters, sons, mothers, fathers who have been lost to the chaos of a reckless open border policies that have been pushed by the radical progressive Democrats. These same Democrats remain unashamed. They fight harder, they fight louder for violent criminal aliens than they ever do for the American families that have been left shattered. They shield sanctuary cities that harbor lawbreakers, defund enforcement, and turn their backs on our people. But we remember, and because we remember, we must act. In 2026, House Republicans must keep fighting. No more federal dollars for sanctuary jurisdictions that defy the law. And I mean no more excuses. No more American blood on the hands of politicians who choose criminals over citizens. Laken's memory demands it. America's safety requires it. And we will not rest until justice is restored for Lakin, for every victim, and for every family that deserves to feel safe in their own country. If a city wants our taxpayers' money, it must follow federal law. If it chooses to act as a sanctuary for lawbreakers, let it do so on its own dime, not ours. Cut the waste, cut the fraud, cut the funding to lawlessness. That's how we'll restore fiscal sanity. That's how we'll restore public safety. That's how we'll restore moral clarity to Washington. And I mean starting today. But there's a second priority: to conserve our way of life. Because a republic only survives if its foundations are defended. You know, the Bible says in Psalm 11:3 that if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? You see, the second mission of the House Republican majority in 2026 is clear and non-negotiable. We must conserve the American way of life. What good is economic prosperity if our freedoms, the very soul of our nation, are eroded day by day? Let's start with the foundation of self-government. Yes, I'm talking about our elections. Only American citizens should vote in American elections. This is not controversial. This is common sense. The House has already acted decisively. We passed the SAVE Act requiring documentary proof of U.S. citizenship to register for federal elections. The need for the SAVE Act couldn't be clearer. Just in my own state of North Carolina, last fall, the DMV admitted to registering an unknown number of non-citizens. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Americans, I believe, demand that we have secure elections. And yet the SAVE Act has been sitting in the Senate gathering dust. And the question, it's clear: when will the Senate pass it? A nation that cannot secure its elections cannot preserve its liberty. An election integrity is not voter suppression. It is the bedrock of a representative government. Now, let's talk about justice. We're witnessing a dangerous trend. Rogue, unelected district judges legislating from the bench. You know it. Issuing sweeping nationwide injunctions that overrule the will of the people, the president, and the Congress. That's not how our Constitution works. That's why the House passed the No Rogue Rulings Act, limiting injunction to the parties in a case, not the entire country. And yes, once again, it awaits Senate action. The question I raise once again: when will the Senate pass it? Courts interpret the law. They do not make it. They do not govern the nation. And we must also defend the rule of law itself. American law is grounded in one constitution, not foreign legal systems. Let me say it clearly. Sharia law has no place superseding federal or state law in the United States of America. We must protect our nation from violence and ideologies that are antithetical to the Constitution. We are one nation, one Constitution, one rule of law, period. And finally, while we're talking, think about free speech. The First Amendment right our founders placed first for a reason. And yet today, as a pastor, I understand that pastors are being muzzled. Churches are being intimidated. The IRS has been weaponized as a tool of censorship, threatening tax-exempt status for daring to speak biblical truth on the moral issues of the day. That's why I introduced the Free Speech Fairness Act to repeal the remnants of the Johnson Amendment and restore pastors' God-given right to preach freely from the pulpits across this land. I'm sorry, but no government bureaucrat should dictate what a pastor can say about life, about marriage, or about liberty. No politician should decide which moral truths are acceptable. Free speech is not a privilege bestowed by Washington. It is a right that is endowed by our Creator. Sadly, America has been drifting away from basic common sense. And nowhere is this more painfully evident than in the world of sports. Our daughters are being forced to compete against males. Our sisters are being forced to share locker rooms and changing spaces with boys. Today, the highest court in our land is grappling with this very issue. This very day, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in two critical cases, Little versus Hickox and West Virginia versus BPJ, to decide whether state laws that protect girls and women's sports by basing eligibility on biological sex at birth violates Title IX or the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. But I submit to you tonight, the American people have already spoken clearly. It was a January 2025 New York Times poll that found that 79% of Americans, including a majority of Democrats, believe athletes who were male at birth but pretend to be female should not be eligible to compete in women's sports. That's exactly why the House passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025. Which restores fairness by clarifying that Title IX protects biological females in federally funded athletic programs. And yet, Senate Democrats blocked it last year, standing against the overwhelming will of the American people. When will Democrats stop rejecting common sense and start listening to the American families they claim to represent? You see, in 2026, House Republicans will keep pushing these bills forward, demanding Senate action, defending our elections, our courts, our laws, and our voices. Because if we don't conserve the American way of life right now, who will? Who will? We will not apologize. We will not back down. We will defend it for our children, for our faith, and for our future. The third priority that I think is critical, and let me move quickly, is that we codify our border wins, because a nation without borders is not a nation. You see, the third task before the House Republican majority is urgent and non-negotiable. We must codify our border wins into law. President Trump has delivered on his promise to secure the border. Customs and Border Protection has achieved 7 straight months of, get this, zero releases of apprehended illegal immigrants into the United States from the border. In 2025, DHS enforcement operations resulted in more than 605,000 deportations. But I submit to you tonight that executive action is not enough. Temporary enforcement, not enough. America needs permanent border security. We must ensure the security of our nation is not undone by the stroke of a pen of a future administration. That means passing H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act. This legislation, as you will recall, finishes the wall, ends catch and release, restores interior enforcement, and puts American sovereignty back where it belongs, in American hands. For years, we were told securing the border was impossible. And then President Trump proved it was possible, simply when the law is enforced. And now it's time to lock those victories into statute. No more open borders. No more fentanyl flooding our streets. No more surrender to cartels and traffickers. A sovereign nation controls who enters its territory, and the House Republican majority must ensure Americans exactly that. Fourth and final priority, celebrate freedom. Celebrate freedom, because America's greatness flows from liberty, not government control. You see, in 2026, House Republicans must do what the radical left despises most. We must celebrate and defend freedom. And yes, that starts with health care, where big insurance and big government have trapped Americans into a broken, unaffordable system they don't control. Just last month, a bombshell GAO report exposed the truth. The Obamacare marketplace rubber-stamped approvals for 96% of fake applications. Get that. Fictitious identities, stolen Social Security numbers, dead people, and yet billions in taxpayer subsidies flowed straight to the insurance companies. Your hard-earned dollars wasted on fraud while families facing skyrocketing premiums. Democrats are fighting tooth and nail. You know what they're fighting tooth and nail to do? To keep funneling subsidies to big insurance giants, to let wealthy individuals continue to access government-funded health care, to allow some Americans to pay zero for coverage while the rest of us foot the bill. But I'm glad to say tonight, Republicans are fighting for you, the American people. Expand real choices for families. Increase competition to drive down prices. Put patients and doctors first, not line the pockets of big insurance. Something has to change. And we must put health care back in the hands of individuals, not bureaucrats in Washington. And a powerful first step, expand health savings accounts, HSAs. HSAs empower families to make their own decisions. Yes, they lower costs. Yes, they increase choice. Yes, they restore freedom to control your own care. Health care should serve patients, not bureaucrats or corporate cronies. And we must confront another growing threat most Americans don't yet see, and that is malign foreign influence, especially from communist China. Our colleges and universities have taken hundreds of millions. Estimates now actually exceed $426 million in recent years from foreign adversaries like China, selling access, influence, and sensitive research to the highest bidder. This is unacceptable. That's why the House passed the Deterrent Act, which includes language for my No Contracts for Foreign Adversaries Act, to force transparency, block shady deals, and stop our institutions from taking money from enemies who wish to harm us. Once again, that bill is now in the Senate, and the question arises once more, when will the Senate pass it? America's intellectual capital, the minds of our next generation, should never be auctioned off to those who seek to undermine us. Freedom is worth defending economically, culturally, and morally. And that's why in 2026, our House Republican majority will keep leading the charge to reform health care, to empower individuals, to secure our campuses from foreign threats, to celebrate the American way of life without apology. Because you see, we understand that freedom isn't free. And that's why we will fight to keep it. For our families, for our future, for our nation. In conclusion, I want you to hear my heart because it's a call to courage. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our moment. As we stand on the threshold of America's 250th birthday, 250 years since 56 brave signers pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to the Declaration of Independence, we are all called to renew the covenant our founders made. The House Republican majority was not sent here to manage decline. We were elected to reverse it, to cut reckless spending, to conserve our God-given way of life, to secure our sovereign borders, to celebrate and defend the freedoms they fought to secure. History will not judge how cautious we were. It will judge how courageous we were. As General George Washington declared to his troops in 1776 on the heels of the Continental Congress's decision for independence, he said, and I quote, "The fate of unborn millions will now depend, under God, on the courage and the conduct of this army," end quote. Today, the fate of unborn millions, our children, our grandchildren, and generations yet to come, depend on us, on our courage, on our conviction, on our unwavering faith in the exceptional nation that our founders envisioned. So I implore you, let us act with conviction. Let us lead with faith. Let us govern with courage, because America's best days are not behind us. They are still ahead. And if we are bold enough, faithful enough, courageous enough to fight for them, we will see it through. In this year of America 250, let us recommit to the principles of liberty, self-government, and moral clarity that launched the greatest experiment in human freedom that the world has ever known. We will not shrink. We will not surrender. We will fight. And we will win for what our founders built and that we are called to preserve. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.